"I'll never let anyone take you from me," I said. "I swear." We didn't have much. A blanket that shed like a golden retriever. A hot plate that clicked like a nervous metronome. The window above the sink that coughed cold air even when it was shut. But I had E. That's what I'll call him here. E. 2 letters that felt like fireworks in my chest. I learned the rhythms, breastfeeding until my spine hummed with pain, tiptoeing past the crib like the floorboards were an alarm system, catnaps with my cheek against his hair, the scent like milk and sunlight. People say babies don't remember. Soft laugh, maybe that's true. But mothers remember everything. The first laugh, the first cough, the first time a door knock turned my blood into ice water. By day, I was a part-time student. By night, I wore a name tag that said AVA and refilled coffee at the 24-hour diner on Broome Street. Shoes squeaked. Neon buzzed. The regulars called me kiddo and left tips and nickels because that was what they had. Miss Dolores lived upstairs. 70 if she was a day. A bulletproof robe, a silver curl of hair at her temple, a laugh big enough to make the radiator rattle. "Hold him while you shower," she'd say, arms already open for E. A mama can't pour from an empty cup. She taught me hacks. Roll towels under the door to stop drafts. Pin blankets over windows to fake curtains. Boil cinnamon on the stove so it smells like a bakery when the landlord swings by. I kept a notebook with columns. Diapers, electricity, bus pass, rent. Pages looked like a battleground. Numbers crossed, arrows drawn. A tiny heart next to E's shoes because he'd started the wobble walk, bold as a circus performer. We were poor, but we were safe. I believed that until the knock. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had tip money in my apron pocket and a blister on my left heel. Knock, knock, knock. I smoothed my hair, shifted E onto my hip, opened the door. 2 people stood there. A woman in a slate blazer with a tablet pressed to her chest like a shield, and a man with a clipboard and the kind of polite smile you learn from training videos. "Ms. Alvarez?" the woman said. "I'm Janine Harrow from Child Protective Services. This is Mr. Cole." The name hit like an accusation even before she asked to come in. I've since learned how the tone works. That chilly politeness that makes you feel guilty for breathing. "Anonymous call," Mr. Cole said, pen already tapping. "Concerns about unsafe housing." They noted the cracked window, the peeling paint, the pile of laundry by the radiator because the dryer in the building had died a month ago and I was prioritizing diapers over quarters. "Do you have anyone living with you?" Janine asked. "No, just me and my son. Beat. And sometimes Miss Dolores upstairs while I shower." They looked at each other like I'd admitted to a crime. Janine tapped the wall near the window with 2 knuckles. "We'll be in touch," she said. They left with little sounds, the click of the tablet case, the squeak of rubber soles. I stood there with E clutching my shirt and thought, this is a misunderstanding. A dumb checklist thing. We're fine. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the door latch. I pushed the couch against the frame and held E to my chest and sang off-key lullabies like spells. For weeks later, another knock. This one like a gavel. It was Janine again, a second worker I didn't recognize, and a uniformed officer whose eyes slid around the apartment like he didn't want to be there. "Ms. Alvarez, we have a court order for temporary removal," Janine said. The words were practiced. "This is not permanent. You'll have a case plan. You'll have visits." I forgot how to breathe. My ears filled with static. He pressed his face into my neck and whimpered. "No," I said. "No, I know." The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, please." My knees went soft. I sank onto the thrift store couch and tried to make my voice reasonable. Steadying breath. "We're not unsafe. We're poor. That's not the same." Janine looked at the window. "A cracked pane is a safety hazard. There are reports of food insecurity, inconsistent childcare. The pane is taped. The landlord's fixing it next week. And food. Miss Dolores, they had the order. They had the script. They had the power. I had a baby boy who knew something terrible was happening because my heartbeat had gone wild against his cheek. "Please," I said, not even sure who I was talking to. The officer. God, Please don't take my son. It cried like the sound had talons. Mama, no. Mama. I would give you details if I could bear it. The exact way his fingers slipped from my shirt, the heat of his skin in my hands when I tried to pass him a stuffed bear and Janine said, "No objects during transfer." The way his socks came off in the struggle so one foot was bare and blue-white with fear. But there are days I can't think of it without needing to sit on the floor because the world tilts. They carried him out. The hallway swallowed his voice. I followed, barefoot, and made it as far as the stairwell before the officer shook his head. "Ma'am." He meant stay. I heard the outer door open, then shut, then silence like a vacuum seal. I slept that night on the floor beside his crib. My fingers hooked in the slats like I could keep time from moving forward. The case plan arrived like homework assigned by a cruel teacher. Parenting classes, stable housing, increase income, weekly supervised visits at the Family Resource Center. Stable housing, increase income. The math was a joke. I doubled my shifts. I stopped classes because the tuition bill made me dizzy. I rented a cubby room in a coworker's place and stashed my boxes beneath a sagging twin bed. I taped E's photo to the wall so I'd see him the second I woke. Parenting classes were in a church basement that smelled like lemon cleaner and wet coats. We practiced swaddling rubber dolls while a woman with a sugar-sweet voice explained, "Secure attachment," to a circle of mothers who kept their nails short because formula stains get under the cuticles. The visits, God, the visits. A room with a couch that had been cleaned into a dull shine. A box of toys that announced their sadness by missing pieces. A two-way mirror with a shadow behind it. You tell yourself it's a mirror. You pretend you can't see the clipboard ghost. They brought E in. He was 3 by then, all knees and curiosity, hair too long in front because whoever cut it didn't know it grew in strange spirals. "Mama," he said, then stopped, like the word had sharp edges. He looked at the mirror. "It's okay," I whispered. Softer. "It's just a window." We played with blocks. I snuck him orange slices and napkins because the posted rules said no outside food, but the facility snacks tasted like dust. When I wiped his sticky fingers, the shade behind the glass shifted, scribbling something. "What's that?" he asked. "It's a silly window," I said again. "Wanna build a tower?" He learned my visits like another calendar day. He'd cling to my neck at the end so hard my shoulders ached for hours. The worker would offer a fake soft, "We'll see you next week, E." And my boy would go limp in that boneless grief kids get when they're trying to stay in your arms. I did everything right. I brought photo books so he'd know his baby face belonged to my arms. I wrote to the caseworker every week. I learned the magic words, protective factor and community support, and used them like talismans in emails. I thought if I won the game, I'd get him back. Court felt like a play staged with props I couldn't touch. The judge, Barnaby, a name that sounded like a children's book grandfather, wore an expression like someone had smuggled a bad smell into his courtroom. He read from reports. He did not look at me. "Ms. Alvarez," the county attorney said, voice clipped, "has made strides, yes, but the home remains unstable. There was an incident, noise complaints from neighbors, a broken window, a late rent notice. She's working 2 jobs. Child care would be inconsistent." My public defender cleared her throat and tried. She really did. "Your Honor, my client has secured additional income. She has completed 12 of 12 parenting sessions. She has a letter from her employer describing her as reliable and—" Barnaby glanced up as if swatting a fly and down again at the papers, which were full of words about me written by people who had not sat on the floor of my kitchen at 3 a.m. and listened to the radiator whistle its haunted tune while I calculated diaper money. "We will continue the current placement," he said. "Beat not yet, not yet." 2 words that stretch like wire across your chest. I left the building with the sense that my life had been redlined in a ledger by a man who would forget my name before he finished lunch. Miss Dolores waited on the stoop when I got home, a paper bag balanced on her knee. "Chicken and rice," she said. "You'll eat before you fall down." I cried into the steam. She patted my back like I was very small and very breakable. "You'll keep records," she said, voice suddenly flint. "Write down every visit, every promise, every lie." Bind it up tight. You don't know yet why you'll need it, but you will. So I did. A spiral notebook swelled into a binder, then 2, then 5. Emails printed. Dates circled. Names underlined. A living thing I fed nightly because it was the only part of this I could control. He turned 4. Then 5. He learned to draw suns with too many rays. He learned to say goodbye without crying where the workers could see. And then the letter came. Certified mail. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, like there was a rock in it. I signed and carried it inside like a bomb. Notice of petition to terminate parental rights. Termination. Long pause. Such a clean word for a violence you can't put your hands around. The petition said I'd failed to remedy the conditions that led to removal. It said, continuing instability. It said, best interests. It said strangers' names so many times that mine felt misspelled. I took the paper to my public defender. She skimmed with her bottom lip caught between her teeth, then met my eyes and didn't lie. They're moving toward adoption, she said. We'll fight it, of course we will, but I want you to be prepared. Prepared. Like there is a way to prepare for a legal machine to decide that the person your body made is no longer your child. The next hearing came in a rush. The county's attorney sounded like a surgeon detailing a routine procedure. The foster mother, Marla, sat behind her with hands folded, wearing a careful face. She had been such a good placement, the report said. So stable. A model home where E's crayons had their own labeled bin. I recognized Marla from the one time I'd seen her, across the resource center lobby, after a visit ran long and our schedules collided. She had given me a smile like a church brochure and said, "He loves you so much," in the tone of a woman presenting a consolation prize. The judge signed. The papers were stamped. And the law unmothered me. I don't remember leaving the courthouse. I do remember throwing up behind a hedge because my body rejected the verdict like poison. I went home and sat on the floor. It was quiet in the way only cheap apartments get, the kind of quiet that hums with the neighbor's television through the wall. On the counter, E's drawing from our last visit. 2 stick figures. One big, one small, holding hands beneath a sun with too many rays. He had written Mama in letters that marched uphill like they were climbing something hard. I took a pen and added a third figure, far away, arms outstretched, and wrote you because I couldn't stand to be erased in his picture. Not yet. That night I baked a cake for nobody. Vanilla from a box. I cut a slice and left it on the counter like an offering. I sang "You Are My Sunshine" until my voice splintered, and then I whispered to the crumbs, "I will find a way back to you. I don't know how, but I will." Miss Dolores came down around midnight without knocking, because in grief the doors are supposed to stay open. "Eat," she said, sitting on the floor beside me. "Sleep, then write it all down." So I did. I wrote until my fingers cramped. The binders grew teeth. Dates, times, promises that evaporated. The worker who had said temporary. The supervisor who'd said best interests. The judge who'd said not yet and then, finally, terminated. The day I saw Marla laugh with Janine in the hallway like old friends. Just a flicker, just a moment, and told myself it was nothing. I didn't know then what the binders would become. Only that there are kinds of grief that need a spine to sit upright, and the binders were mine. Long, steadying breath. I woke the next morning to a quiet that didn't feel like a home anymore. The crib stood against the wall like a glass case in a museum-labeled artifact. I wrapped the stuffed bear in a towel and put it in my top drawer. I taped E's drawing to the fridge. I went to work. I smiled when regulars asked for more coffee. And when someone said, "You look tired, kiddo," I laughed like a person whose life had not just been split down the middle. On the walk home, it started to rain. Not the soft kind. The kind that scours. I tilted my face up and let it happen because there are days you need the sky to cry with you so you don't drown alone. 5 years passed. Then 10. Then 15. Time moves differently when your heart is buried in the ground, but you're still forced to walk around like a normal person. I worked. I paid bills. I got older. My hair thinned at the edges. My body softened in places that used to be sharp. But inside I was paused. I marked birthdays with candles on cakes baked for no one. I wrote letters I never mailed, whole notebooks of them. Today you'd be 12. Today you'd start high school. Do you remember me? I watched strangers' kids graduate on front lawns with balloons, while mine existed only in binders and memory. There is a kind of silence where the world forgets you. That's where I lived. It was a Wednesday night. I had just gotten home from work. I was 42 and tired in the way that sinks into bones. My phone buzzed. A message request. The preview said, "Hi, I think you're my mom." I nearly dropped the phone. My hands shook so badly I had to set it on the table and back away like it was a wild animal. I forced myself to click. There it was, his face. Older now, sharper jaw, shoulders broad. But the eyes. My God, the eyes. "I've been looking for you," the message continued. "I think I found you. Please write back." I pressed my hand to my mouth because I couldn't breathe. For 20 years, I'd prepared for every outcome. Prison, death, amnesia. Never this. We met in a corner cafe with yellowed wallpaper and tables that wobbled if you leaned on them wrong. When he walked in, my whole body recognized him before my brain did. I stood. My legs nearly gave out. He wrapped me in a hug so tight it felt like he was trying to stitch us back together with his arms. "Hi, Mom," he whispered. I broke. We sat for hours. He ordered black coffee. I didn't even drink mine. "I always knew something was off," he said. "They said you couldn't take care of me, that you didn't want me, but it never fit. It never felt true." I tried to answer, but the words tangled with tears. So he kept talking. He told me about the house. The toys lined up perfectly in bins. The family photos where he had to stand still like a mannequin. They had money. They had order. But they didn't have love, he said. "I never felt like their son. Just a piece of their collection." He leaned forward. "And every birthday I wondered about you." I reached across the table, grabbed his hand. "Every birthday, I baked you a cake." He cried then, quietly, like someone who had practiced holding it in too long. The more we talked, the more pieces surfaced. He told me he'd looked into his adoption records. He'd requested files, sifted through names. And he found something. The anonymous call that triggered CPS? It wasn't random. Came from Marla, his foster mother, the same woman who adopted him. She had sabotaged me from the very beginning, made the call, shaped the narrative, slipped right into the role of savior. His face went hard when he told me. His jaw clenched the way mine used to in court. "They stole me," he said. "From you. From us. They stole 20 years. I begged him to let it go, to not dig too deep, to just let us have each other again. But he shook his head. No, they don't get to walk away. They don't get to live their happy little life while you were left in pieces. They ruined us, Mom." He found a lawyer, a real bulldog of a man with a voice like gravel. They started building a case against the county, the agency, even Marla and her husband. The binders I had kept all those years, the ones Miss Dolores had insisted I fill, he took them to the lawyer like holy relics. Pages of dates, broken promises, notes about the worker who said, "Temporary." "You kept proof," he told me. "You saved everything." "I didn't know why," I said. "You knew," he corrected. "You just didn't know when." The case dragged on for years. Depositions, hearings, cross-examinations where they tried to shred me to pieces. She was unstable. She was poor. She couldn't provide. They said I was a child playing house, that losing him had been inevitable. But then he took the stand. He spoke with a steadiness that made my chest ache with pride. "They lied to her," he said. "They told her it was temporary. They told her she'd get me back. And then they stole me. My whole childhood I felt something missing. It was her. They didn't save me. They robbed me." The courtroom went so quiet you could hear the bailiff shift in his chair. The press caught wind. Headlines appeared. "The stolen son case. Wrongful termination of parental rights?" For once, the world was looking at them. Not me. Not us. Them. And they didn't like the light. After 2 years of legal war, they folded. The county admitted wrongdoing. The agency agreed to a settlement. It wasn't enough to give us back the 20 years they stole. Nothing could be. But the money was staggering. Enough to change a life. I told E to take it. He was the one who had fought. He was the one who had grown up with the hollow spaces. But he shook his head. "Mom," he said, pressing the paperwork into my hands. "This is yours. They didn't just steal me. They stole your life. You should have had a home, a career, safety. They owe you that." I cried so hard I couldn't even see the signature line. He bought me a house. A small, sunny place with a yard that smelled like cut grass and lilacs in the spring. For the first time in my life, I didn't hear neighbors through the walls. For the first time, I had a door that locked with a sound that meant safe. "Rest now," he told me. "You've carried enough." But the real gift wasn't the house. It wasn't the money. It was him. The phone calls every single day. The dinners we cooked together. The arguments about silly things, the way families are supposed to argue. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't a ghost. I was a mother again. He asked about the binders sometimes. The notebooks. The letters I'd written to him every birthday. We read them together. I expected it to break him. Instead, he said, "You never gave up on me. Not once." We started new traditions. Sunday dinners. Friday movie nights. On his birthday, I baked him a cake and handed him the first slice with shaking hands. He blew out the candles and said, "This is what I always dreamed it would feel like." And I thought, so did I. When he got married, he asked me to walk him down the aisle. I thought my knees might buckle. But when the doors opened and the music swelled, I stood straighter than I had in years. I was not a ghost. I was not a failure. I was a mother walking her son into his future. His bride hugged me afterward, whispered in my ear, "Thank you for giving me him." I nearly sobbed through the whole reception. Now, I'm 55. E and his wife just had a baby girl. My granddaughter. The first time I held her. Tiny and warm and blinking at the light. My whole life folded into that moment. I thought of the night they ripped him from my arms. The way they thought they won. But they didn't. Because he came back. He found me. He fought for me. He gave me back the life they stole. Now, when I wake up in the house he gave me, I whisper the same thing every morning. I lost my baby once, but never again.